From raw meat to raw madness, the Liver King has officially snapped, and what started as primal fitness turned into a full-blown public meltdown. He's been arrested, accused of making terroristic threats, and caught spiraling online in a series of disturbing, unfiltered rants that had fans wondering if they were watching the end of a character, or the collapse of a man. But the most shocking part, this all might have started with one Netflix documentary. Let's break down how the king of ancestral living became the face of a modern-day meltdown. Just a month ago, everything seemed under control. The Liver King had just appeared in a Netflix documentary, shirtless as ever, preaching primal laws with the same swagger that built him a multi-million-dollar empire. But something felt off. Behind the shredded physique and staged family dinners, the cracks were showing. His wife seemed deep in the delusion, playing the role of queen to a crumbling kingdom. But it was his son, Stryker, who told the real story. Not with words, but with his silence. Stone-faced, distant, shut down. Every scene he was in, you could feel the resentment, like he was quietly counting the days until he could escape this circus of raw meat and red lights. And looking back, that cold tension in the documentary wasn't just awkward family dynamics. It was a warning. Because what came next, nobody was ready for. Out of nowhere, headlines hit, Liver King arrested in Austin, Texas, facing terroristic threat charges. This wasn't just a wellness influencer caught in a scandal. This was a full-blown felony. No staged content, no marketing ploy. Just flashing lights, handcuffs, and the sound of a legacy imploding. The same man who sold peace, primal bonding, and discipline was now pacing around a hotel, mumbling incoherent threats and allegedly preparing for a violent confrontation. And here's the twist. The entire breakdown had been playing out in public for days, live-streamed across social media, while thousands of followers watched it spiral in real time. He wasn't hiding. He was broadcasting every moment of his unraveling, one shaky selfie video at a time. But who was he threatening? And what pushed him this far? That's where things get personal. And dangerously obsessive. At the center of Liver King's collapse was one name, Joe Rogan. The world's most influential podcaster had called him out years ago, bluntly, publicly, and repeatedly. "He's not natural," Rogan said. "He's full of it." And when Derek, from More Plates, More Dates, exposed Liver King's steroid use with receipts, that illusion of primal purity shattered for good. But instead of taking the L and moving on, Liver King steeped in it. He held a grudge like it was one of his ancestral tenets. You could see it festering in every new clip. He wasn't just responding. He was unraveling. Suddenly, every video turned into a rant about Rogan. He'd mumble to himself, pace through his yard, and point at invisible enemies. At one point, he even looked dead into the camera and said, "I'm picking a fight with Joe Rogan." It didn't feel like trash talk. It felt like a threat. And as his posts got darker, more chaotic, and less coherent, the internet started asking the question no one wanted to say out loud. Was this guy losing his mind? The answer became obvious when he reached for something far more dangerous than a camera. Then came the box. In the middle of his erratic live streams, Liver King started carrying around a mysterious black case. At first, no one knew what was inside, but the way he clutched it, guarded it, almost worshipped it. People knew it wasn't good. Rumors started flying. Was it a weapon? Was he planning something? Was he seriously threatening Joe Rogan? And then came the confirmation. In his own words, he admitted the box contained a gun. Now, combine that with the fact that he was publicly announcing a trip to Austin, Rogan's city, while talking about bloody murder and fights that must happen. And suddenly, This wasn't internet drama anymore. This was a man with a weapon, an obsession, and a platform. And every new video was more disturbing than the last. He filmed himself pacing his mansion, talking to his dogs like they were soldiers, acting like his family was there, even though the house was silent. At one point, he spoke to his son as if he were in the room, but he wasn't. It felt less like content, and more like a breakdown in real time. But what he did next officially crossed the line and brought the law to his front door. This wasn't a challenge anymore. It was a mission. Liver King began obsessively calling out Joe Rogan by name, over and over, in every post. Not just once or twice, dozens of times. Morning, night, completely unhinged. He even went so far as to say, "I'll see you tomorrow. Bloody FK and murder, bro." And if you thought that was just talk, think again. Because the next day, he actually started the trip. A convoy of vehicles, including Liver King himself, began heading toward Austin, Texas, the place Rogan calls home. He even filmed himself pulling up, proudly announcing, "Guess what? You're dead. You're dead." But here's where it turns truly disturbing. He wasn't just ranting about a fight anymore. He was talking about tracking Rogan down, bringing that mysterious black box with him, and counting the hours until their supposed confrontation. And yet, somehow, he kept flipping back and forth between threats and what he called peace offerings. One moment he's shouting about violence, the next inviting Rogan and his family to his house for dinner after the fight. He even designed his own merch. A hoodie with Joe Rogan versus Liver King printed across the chest, as if this was all part of some bizarre promotional campaign. But this wasn't promotion. This was psychosis. And law enforcement wasn't about to sit around and watch him spiral further. Because when he finally checked into the Four Seasons in Austin, that's when everything caught up to him. By the time the police showed up at the Four Seasons, Liver King was completely out of it, pacing his luxury hotel room in a custom Rogan versus Liver King hoodie, mumbling incoherently, and still talking to the camera like the world was his courtroom. But this time, he wasn't alone. For the first time in days, his wife and kids appeared in the background. And what's chilling is how normal they acted. No screaming, no panic, no visible fear. Just quiet compliance. Like this wasn't the first time Dad had completely lost it. His wife casually explained to the kids that Dad would probably be out in 24 hours. His son Stryker stood there, visibly tense, barely saying a word. And then Liver King leaned in and gave them all a hug, a strange, almost theatrical farewell, before walking outside to surrender. The cops didn't drag him out. He walked out, head held high, still treating it like a show, still convinced he was the hero in his own bizarre, spiraling story. He was charged with making terroristic threats and stuffed in the back of a cruiser like any other unhinged guy who went too far online. But even jail couldn't humble him, because what he said after getting out somehow made everything worse. Most people come out of jail with a little humility. Not Liver King. Just 24 hours after his arrest, he was back online. And somehow even more unhinged. Now under a restraining order, he couldn't say Joe Rogan's name anymore. So he started calling him Seth Rogan, like this was all some twisted joke. But this wasn't a joke. This was a man who had lost touch with reality, yelling at dogs on camera, demanding respect, and still fixated on getting Rogan's attention. At one point, he even asked fans to help track down where Rogan's family might be, just so he could stay 200 yards away. It was a technical compliance with the restraining order, wrapped in a disturbing obsession. Then came the coffee enemas. Yes, literal video of Liver King inserting coffee into his body, calling it part of his ancestral detox. He claimed it was his fourth that morning, and all of this was happening while still in Austin. It was clear. This wasn't about beef. It wasn't even about ego anymore. It was about a man completely detached from the world around him. Still live streaming, still performing, and still acting like the story wasn't over. But the most heartbreaking part? The people closest to him were still playing along. As the days went on, the chaos didn't stop. Liver King kept posting. More coffee enemas, more delusions, more half-coded threats aimed at Rogan. But buried beneath all the madness was a sad, undeniable truth. This wasn't just some influencer meltdown. This was a man cracking under the weight of his own identity. The same guy who once screamed about masculinity, discipline, and ancestral purpose was now sobbing on camera, ranting at invisible enemies and clinging to a version of himself that clearly no longer existed. His wife, still by his side, seemed numb to the spiral. His sons, especially Stryker, looked like they were watching their father disappear in slow motion. And that Netflix documentary? It now felt like a warning label we all ignored. But maybe the darkest part of all is how much of this collapse was fueled by clout, by the internet, by people chasing content over help. And Liver King, in his desperation to be more than a meme, became one. At the cost of his sanity, Liver King built an empire on lies, steroids, and raw meat. He sold masculinity in a bottle, primal life in a capsule, and made millions preaching discipline while hiding chaos. But now, the mask is off. The primal king is no more. And all that's left is a broken man pacing around empty rooms, still trying to fight ghosts no one else can see. Maybe it was internet fame. Maybe it was childhood trauma. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the same raw meat that rotted his brain from the inside out. Whatever the cause, this story is no longer about fitness. It's about what happens when you lose yourself in your own character and forget how to come back.